I think 2023 is going to be really interesting. I think it's going to cause a lot of people to be leaner in some ways and then to be bolder in others. There's a ton of data, I'm sure you're familiar with this, that during a recession or a pullback, that typically those who succeed are the people who double down on capturing market share. So I think we'll see a lot of that and see some new and interesting leaders in different spaces, in the tech space for sure. I think that's going to happen in things like the CTV space or different advertising fueled technology, sort of advertising technology providers. I think that we'll see some bold leaders start to capture market share because they're going in the opposite direction of everyone else.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
I'm pleased to be joined today by Marilyn Mead, who is the VP of Marketing for Winmo. And not everybody knows what Winmo is. Certainly those of us in the agency world have probably crossed paths with Winmo, but not everyone has. So what is your elevator pitch for Winmo when you have to give it?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to be on here with you today, Kevin. I really appreciate it. Winmo is, for those who don't know, essentially a platform that tracks companies, brands, and agencies who control about 100 billion in marketing spend every year across the US, and we also have a UK product. So if you're looking to do business with brands and or agencies who are spending significantly in marketing, you would use Winmo to identify who is spending right now, what channels are they investing in, what are the decision makers that control those budgets. And if you to your point, agencies, if you're an agency, we have a predictive element in the platform that sort of indicates when brands will be in the market for new agencies. So obviously a very valuable tool for that vertical to determine sources of new business. So typically our customers are agency, business development people, media sales, ad tech, MarTech sales, and sponsorship sales. Hopefully that's a bit of an elevator, the 10,000 foot view.
Yeah, I think it was a long elevator ride.
It was. Sorry about that. I can be long-winded. I'll try and keep it brief.
For the next elevator. Ages ago, Did It used the List Inc., which was, ended up getting merged in, and you guys created the new brand. So I'm familiar with it. And one of the challenges I know we were trying to address, and perhaps other agencies do as well, which was when you're going to target folks on the marketing side, there's a lot of churn, right? There's a lot of turnover. So how does your team keep the data fresh? I mean, because that was really, freshness of data was key.
Right. And there's more churn, you're talking about back when it was the list online. Now, when in the days of Winmo, especially post-COVID or pandemic, churn has increased significantly. So the way that we keep track of it, obviously technology, we have different technologies that monitor job changes and alert us when someone has a new title on LinkedIn. But what we found is there's no way around having a human verification element to this. So we actually have a team of researchers in the US who call in, verify agency org charts, brand relationships, decision makers at companies, because not everyone puts that on LinkedIn or has it publicly available, what their title is, or, their new company. So we have a team of researchers who day in and day out make those phone calls and write emails to verify that information.
Yeah, one other follow-up question just occurred to me, which is, do current customers also sort of alert you if there's been a change and they find it?
Yeah, they're actually a great resource for us as well. There's an opportunity to flag data in Winmo to say this person isn't there anymore, or, whatever the case may be, new title, new department. So our customers are also a big line of defense for us in identifying those changes.
Right. Well, that's great. I noticed there's a lot more data fields now than there used to be back when I used to use the product. So which of the data fields and data points are your clients finding most valuable, besides obviously company and title, that's key, but there's a lot more in there now.
There's tons, and it depends on the specific use case that you have, obviously. If you sell advertising, if you sell digital advertising, we have a tool that tells you where you're winning versus your competition, or advertisers spending with your competition and not with you. So that's part of our Winmo Pro package. I would say that in ad sales, that's a very popular data point, in addition to knowing obviously who to reach out to win that business, but just those triggers. For the agency space, the predictive analytics that I was mentioning before, letting someone know, not that there's an RFP or something that's already been announced, but hey, the signs are there that this brand will probably hire a new agency in the next 6 months to a year. It's called our vulnerable account index. So that's a really valuable data point for agencies. And I would say when the vulnerable account index is part of Winmo Edge, and when we monitor product analytics, we're seeing a lot of people that's their jumping off point into the product. They get a list of leads every morning that are predictive, rather than this campaign has already launched or this agency has been named. It's, we believe this this brand will launch a campaign, or we believe based on our analytics that they'll be hiring a new agency or considering new MarTech partners. So I think that's a big jumping off point for a lot of our customers. But again, depends on the use case. There's a lot there. It's podcast spend we recently added. That's been really popular. So spend areas, predictive triggers, and then decision maker information for sure.
Great. Yeah, I remember before I owned the eMarketing Association, which has become a huge tool for us from a biz dev perspective on the Did It side. What was the final thing that convinced me back in when it was the list was time savings, right? Because the data that was available other than the list or Winmo now was just like, it was so time consuming, right? So I don't remember who my salesperson was at the time, but I think the way they pushed me over the finish line was, it's going to be a huge time savings. Did you guys ever do any studies to figure out how much time people actually save by just being able to use your platform versus the old way?
We did, and I should probably rerun this, but a couple of years ago, we did a study, and it was on average, you save 2 hours a day. And the way we position that is, yes, you save 2 hours a day prospecting, which opens up 2 hours a day that you can be doing what you actually do, which is selling and building relationships with the right people, instead of researching and trying to find information to be able to do your job. So essentially, we think of Winmo as the second brain that then helps you do your job efficiently, instead of wasting so much 2 hours a day, or however much it may be, depending on what you do and how long your prospecting takes, but freeing you up from that.
Right. Clearly you serve, the full ecosystem from the sort of Fortune 1000 on down. And, sometimes the way in which agencies are selected is different. The bigger they are, the more likely you are to see RFPs when agency selection processes are run through. Did It happens not to be a huge fan of RFPs. We almost never answer them unless we helped write them. But when there's how would a team use your platform differently if you don't enjoy the RFP process? You don't want to just if you want to get in there proactively, if you want to sort of preempt the RFP or circumvent the RFP.
So I feel like Winmo is the tool for the person that doesn't want the RFP process. We publish in Winmo Edge, we'll publish RFPs that are happening, but the way that our clients use Winmo is to identify the opportunity before a brand conducts an agency search or, review or whatever the case may be. How do you know 6 to 12 months in advance that a brand is likely to be in need of a new agency, so that you don't have to just be running on, I call it pitch addiction, responding to RFPs and kind of on that sort of track versus proactively identifying who you want to work with and who is likely to be open to a conversation with you and circumventing the RFP process.
Great. My next question is sort of about how salespeople have to allocate their time and resources, and then sales managers and potentially even marketing as it relates to any efforts they're doing, which is this idea that there's an inclination among biz dev teams that they only do whale hunting. And of course, whale hunting might be more likely to be an RFP, but just in general, they like to do whale hunting. They're like, oh, if we could, close a whale, we feed the community forever on the whale. But like tuna is not so exciting, but tuna is also a decent sized fish. Minnows maybe nobody wants, right? So when your team or you were advising folks on how to balance their day between when they're using the platform between sort of whale hunting versus doing the sort of fishing that will bring in other size clients, are there any tips and tricks that you share with them?
So I'm going to steal this one. I just thought of this. I'm going to steal this. I want to say it's our Catapult division who advises this. We have an outsourced business development arm at Winmo. And what they advise the agencies that they work with is to score people into 3 tiers and split your time accordingly. So whale hunting 30% of the time, 30% of the time, bread and butter, gettable, not pie in the sky stuff. And then 30% of the time, maybe it's a little bit below what you are hoping to achieve. But sometimes, to your point, tuna is still a significant fish, and there are accounts that keep the lights on for you, while you're whale hunting. So I think that 3-tier system kind of allows people to spend their time accordingly. And if you're hunting something that's a higher tier, you might put in a little bit more time into the crafting a really specific outreach strategy versus the bottom tier where you can maybe put them into an email cadence or soft touch points, something more automated, a little less personalized. So you're not spending an exorbitant amount of time on the lower tier sort of accounts.
Yeah, it's another interesting element of, particularly as you start to look at the larger prospects. And again, I'm wearing this sort of agency hat, but it's true just as much for media, right? Which is increasingly decisions are made by committees, right? And so that means it's no longer necessarily a single decision maker like, oh yeah, if Bob says it's good, then, we're golden. I think those days may still be around for some brands, but sort of it's more likely that there's going to be some kind of a committee or a process where influencers are going to be equally important. So how do you advise sales teams sort of coordinate their efforts when there's probably a committee involved?
I think that's a great question. And I would agree that it's rarely, unless you're hunting very small startups, it's rarely one person who you have to convince. There's usually a constellation of decision makers who are involved in pushing something through. Something really cool that we released about, I want to say a month ago. Has it been a month? Yeah, a month or 2 months ago, maybe, is called Personality Insights. I don't know if you're familiar with these or have heard about them, but within Winmo, we have personality insights on the individual decision makers at a particular organization. And what I find really interesting about it, so first of all, you need to know everyone who's involved in the decision-making process, just glancing at titles, CMO, marketing director, brand manager, whoever that may be. But then if you peek into their personality profiles, it gives you a hint at who the decision driver is. Mm-hmm. So who the person, because it's not always, this, I'm sure from your experience, it's not always the person at the top of the food chain who's the yes person. Sometimes it's someone you don't expect who has a really dominant personality, and maybe they lead the charge on buying decisions. So you can spend a little bit more time on that person and know that that's who you want to incorporate several people in your outreach, but who you really have to convince, who's the yes or no vote on the committee, as you said.
Yeah, the scariest thing is when you don't even know that person exists, and then the no flies out of left field, and you had no idea that there was this person who had a tremendous amount of influence, veto power, right, over the decision, and they weren't even on anybody's radar. So I guess having a good footprint idea of all the various moving pieces can be really critical.
For sure.
Clearly a lot of your clients on the agency side or on the media sales side, they're very sales driven organizations. And so one idea that popped into my head as a result of an email I got from your team was like, oh, I wonder if the people on the brand side sometimes feel completely inundated because suddenly your system has identified them as like likely to make a change or something along those lines, or it's a CMO who moves into a new role and okay, yeah, those people connected them on LinkedIn, they got their notifications, but then all of a sudden out goes Winmo letting everybody else know that this person's in the role. Have you ever gotten any feedback from the brand side where they were sort of surprised at having been inundated?
I am not going to lie to you. It has happened in the past, not super common, but it has happened. What I would say about Winmo versus a lot of sort of sales intelligence databases that I think makes us a little bit different in how we like to think we're working in service of the people at the brands, not just our customers, is that when we serve up a lead to someone through Winmo Edge, for instance, saying that there's an opportunity here, it very clearly defines in the article, this is who should reach out, and this is what you should be offering. This is the problem that they're looking to solve, so that it hopefully gives people an opportunity to say, that's actually not what I provide. This article is describing a challenge that this marketer is having, and I'm not the right solution for them. And then allows them to kind of select themselves out of the communication process. Whereas people who have the right solution can say, that's where I can, actually provide something of value to this marketer. So that's kind of my answer to that. I know it's a tough place to be in, but I think we provide salespeople with enough context to allow them to put their best foot forward and provide value as a result of, Winmo data.
Yeah, I guess in the end, every sales team, if they didn't learn it, when they first started, they'll learn it fairly quickly, is that there's no point in chasing a lead that isn't really a lead because you're not a good fit for that person. Right. So, and the more data you have on the prospect, the more you can sort of prejudge whether whether you're likely to close it and whether you would be a right fit for that business. You wear the marketing hat yourself, right? You're marketing yourself and your brand. And I'd love to hear what marketing channels you rely on and love to use in your team, when you're going out and doing marketing.
My favorite would be word of mouth. So people like you incentivizing our evangelists however I can. To sell the Winmo story for us. And I think that that's what's made us as successful as we are in the space is, giving our customers a platform and incentivizing them to give us reviews and provide referrals and testimonials. So word of mouth is definitely my favorite. In terms of paid media channels, we do paid search. We are involved in that. Paid advertising on LinkedIn mostly. I would love to do TikTok. I haven't been 100% convinced on its value, but I've heard of other B2B marketers seeing success on things like TikTok and Instagram. We haven't dipped our toe in yet, but we've found a fair amount of success on LinkedIn. Events, trade shows, I've found in the past year or two since things kind of opened back up for us have been a great source of business opportunity. So I would say those are the top channels for us. And then email marketing, as it sounds like you're on the receiving end of some of our messaging.
Yes, that's probably the email address you had for me from 12 years ago from the previous company. Still receiving, the trickles. Again, I stay subscribed because I'm fascinated by the messaging, right? You guys always have some really fun copy and the good subject lines. And, I think every marketer can learn from being subscribed to drip campaigns from companies they admire, right? Because it's a fun communication that you get.
All credit there goes to my colleague, Brittany Johnson. I will pass along your words, your praise to her. She does a very good job on our email marketing and providing not just not being salesy and providing value, providing different pieces of content to people, whether or not, they're ready to buy Winmo, something that they can use today.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of B2B clients as well. One thing that we were surprised that worked is that we didn't think Facebook could work, but if you sort of pull the right targeting levers in Facebook, we've actually gotten our B2B clients where we thought it would only work in LinkedIn, and it ended up working in Facebook as well. It's a little more quirky in setting it up right, because you're selling to the individual and where that individual is, right? They could be in LinkedIn, they could be in Facebook. It's a little more difficult. We found with TikTok, we haven't, for the most part, it's harder for the B2B.
TikTok,
yeah,
the targeting's not there.
Yeah, that's it. That's the thing, is you can't refine the targeting well enough to eliminate the waste out of the campaign. And that may change over time, because obviously it's one of the platforms that is evolving most quickly. And we've also found direct mail continues to crush it. But we've had to now start appending the home postal addresses of our B2B prospects onto the list as well, and not just catch them at the office, but catch them at home. And
that's
so
an interesting phase that we're in now. We're actually doing like a client direct mail, and we're having to send out like a survey to ask them, where should we send this? Because we know that like so many of you are still not in your offices. So where should we send this?
Yeah, the other thing we did on the B2B side, particularly when the values of the leads are high, is we hyper-personalize every piece of digital direct mail with its own QR code, so that the recipient gets a completely unique piece of mail, not just the name and address on the front, but when it gets scanned to take advantage of the offer, which is a personalized offer, it triggers the CRM. So if the person's cat pukes behind them, they don't fill out the form on the landing page, the sales team still knows that this is a Glengarry lead. And so it's giving the B2B sales teams an opportunity to have sort of second tier leads that are still great, but the person didn't like the landing page, whatever it was, price, or the offer was confusing, or their cat puked, whatever happened, it's still better than a cold lead, right? And so from that perspective, that's been a really fun. I invented it a couple of years ago and we started deploying it. But we tell the people that use it, do not have the salespeople call right away. Even though you saw it pop up in almost real time, it's creepy, like, because then the person knows you're lying. We're just saying, we did a direct mailing to your general, group, blah, blah, blah. Like, there's no way to disguise it if it's not 24 hours later. Like, give it 24 hours to rest. And then
that's such an interesting thing with like intent data is so big right now.
Yeah.
And, or just, tracking back where people have visited online. It's so odd when you're on a website and 2 seconds later, one of their sales reps calls you.
Exactly.
Like, how do you know?
Yeah. You sort of like, you should make it at least that it could be coincidence, or it could be serendipitous. And it's not sort of an obvious hard line that's drawn between the two, the triggers.
Like, have a day delay. Have a day delay, not exactly. While I'm on the website. It just feels creepy to me.
Yeah, exactly. So what has you excited about 2023? Nobody knows whether we'll be in a recession, won't be in a recession. Will there be changes in the way in which we market? But what has you excited?
I think 2023 is going to be really interesting. I think it's going to cause a lot of people to be leaner in some ways, and then to be bolder in others. There's a ton of data, I'm sure you're familiar with this, that during a recession or a pullback, that typically those who succeed are the people who double down on capturing market share. So I think we'll see a lot of that and see some new and interesting leaders in different spaces, in the tech space for sure. I think that's going to happen in things like the CTV space or different advertising fueled technology, sort of advertising technology providers. I think that we'll see some bold leaders start to capture market share because they're going in the opposite direction of everyone else, where everyone, might be holding back or being cautious. I think we'll see who the leaders are and see those people emerge in 2023.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Another element that sort of, I think, drives that for the bold is that as some of their competition pull out of the media markets, now that, it's almost closer to a real-time auction for a lot of this inventory, pricing will go down, right? So the efficiency of your media will go up.
Yes.
And so that just further amplifies what a great deal you're getting on that particular media. It still needs to be, right media, right message, right time, right audience, etc. But if you can get it for, 15, 20% cheaper, that just makes it all the more interesting to go after that.
100%. And I think that, to your point, there will be greater efficiencies too. I think like there was the luxury in the past few years where people were kind of running messaging that maybe wasn't the right message at the right time, but we'll see how it does. I think there will be changes quickly to media campaigns if they're not performing. So a lot of pivoting, A/B testing, and quickly making a decision and ultimately being more efficient with spend.
Yeah, we've also found that creative matters more than ever, right? Because you
100%.
can have the perfect audience and the perfect time, but if your creative is bad, the campaign still fails. And it's one of the reasons that we sort of unified, media buying and creative in the same shop, right? That's not always the case, but we're like, they cannot be separated by more than a couple of cubicles. Like they need to be able to talk to each other. And maybe it's just our bias, right? But we, especially once you start creating custom creative for segments that are big enough to justify the custom creative, right? And as to how big that is, it's going to depend on the prospecting and the clients and the client size and the value of the lifetime value of the customer, et cetera. But, when it makes sense, there's something to be said for, like, I would say hyper personalizing the creative, but, thinking about what buttons you can push against different segments of your audience, right? And doing separate creative. And it's hard to do when it's a separate agency or like too separated to have conversations. So it'll be really interesting to see how 2023 evolves. Thanks, Marilyn, for joining me. And I look forward to staying in touch.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.